Hi everybody, so I will be going over with you day 2 of our one-step equation practice. Today is March 31st. This was recommended to complete today, but I know that everybody's schedule is different, so if you have not gotten to this page yet, you should hit pause right now, find this document on Google Classroom, do your best work, and then pull up this video to check your answers. So some of them I've got a good start on. I just finished a Google Meet with some of your classmates. So in question A, you have x plus 6 equals 9. I showed subtracting on both sides of the equation to isolate the variable, and you get a solution of x equals 3. Okay? In B, I'm going to go down the column here. In B, even though the operation was on the right side of the equation, I still need to isolate using inverse operations. So I'm going to add 7 on both sides, and I get a solution of 18 is equal to n. Okay? In C, we have fractions involved, but it's still the same process. So the equation is z plus 2/7 equals 6/7. I showed subtracting by 2/7 on both sides to isolate the variable. So 2/7 take away 2/7 is nothing, so it cancels out, which is why I put this slash through here. And then I subtract 2/7 on the right side of the equation, and z equals 4/7. Moving right along, D is a subtraction equation. In order for me to isolate this variable, I need to add 14, and this cancels out, and add 14. And as you can see here, this is very tedious or difficult to do with Kami. So my best advice to you while you're working on these pages at home while we are doing our distance learning is just to get out a piece of paper and check your answers with the video or hop onto Google Meet if you have questions. So x equals 37 for D. Okay, moving right along, when a number touches a letter, it means to multiply. So 6x equals 54. In order for me to isolate x, the opposite of multiplication is division. In algebra, we use a fraction bar notation for our division. This cancels out. I need to keep my equation balanced, and x equals 9. Same process for f. In order for me to isolate x, I need to divide by 4 on both sides. 4x divided by 4 cancels out, leaving x isolated or by itself. And 9 equals x. Okay, so I'm going to move up to the second column of work here. Now this one was 1/3 n, which is multiplication. When a fraction touches a variable, it means to multiply. So here in pink, I showed 1/3 divided by 1/3 canceling out, and then 12 divided by 1/3 to reach my solution. Now, in 6th grade, we've spent a lot of time talking about how dividing by fractions are very difficult, but we can multiply by the reciprocal, or sometimes we refer to this as keep, change, flip. So we keep 12 the same, we change division to its inverse operation, multiplication, and we use the reciprocal or the flipped fraction of 1/3 to get 3/1. And 12 times 3 is 36. Okay, moving down to H, we've got 7/8 equals 3/8 plus t. I showed subtracting 3/8 on the right side. That isolates t. And then subtracting 3/8 on the left side to get 4/8 as a solution. Okay. Some people asked if we can write it as a decimal. This is equivalent to 5/10 because 4/8 is equivalent to 1/2. But when we're dealing with fractions, we should really keep them in fraction form. Okay. Over here, we've got w divided by 7 equals 8. The opposite of dividing is multiplying. I'm going to show multiplication on both sides of my equation. This cancels out, and I'm left with 56 equals w. Okay. Same thing down here for j. The opposite of dividing by 8 is multiplying by 8. Sorry, that should be a multiplication sign. Again, much easier to do this on a piece of paper if you've got it at home. And c equals 96. Okay. Last one here, I did kind of erase over k. But on this problem, y over 11 is the same operation as doing y divided by 11. So if I want to show the inverse or opposite operation of dividing by 11, I showed that I was multiplying by 11. I used the dot symbol for multiplication. This is a multiplication symbol. So dividing by 11 and multiplying by 11 cancels out, and 11 times 11 would give you a solution of 121. So that's it for page 1. Now on page 2, questions 2 and 3 were a little bit different than the equations we have set up for you on page 1. So in question 2, the equation 13 minus x equals 4.5 represents this situation where x is the amount of fabric Lindsay used for her quilt. Okay. Now, when you rewrite this equation, you know that x is not isolated because there's a second term on that side of the equal sign. So 13 minus x equals 4.5. Now, it's challenging because some of you tried to subtract 13 and subtract 13, and you wound up with a negative number. Now, there is a way to do this using one-step equations in isolation, but you get into the negative numbers, and we're not quite there yet. So I want to go back to your visual models that we used a lot at the beginning of learning about equations and talk through what each of these parts mean in the problem. So if Lindsay has 13 yards of fabric, this should be a rectangle. Sorry, it's difficult to use Cami, but this is the 13 yards of fabric she has in all. We know that she uses a certain amount, which is x, and then she's left with 4.5. We've spent a lot of time this year talking about parts and wholes. So if we combine what she used, which was unknown, with the 4.5 yards she has left, it should equal 13. So instead of using a one-step equation, I was able to problem solve through and decide that 13 yards, take away the 4.5 that she had left, should give me the solution of x. Now, I rewrote this equation to show that 13 take away 4.5, or 4 and 5 tenths, would give me 8 and 5 tenths. Now, the way to check this, that's why I have this check mark here, is from the video and yesterday, is we always check our work by substituting in the variable. So I substituted in my solution of 8.5 for where x was, and I do in fact get a solution of 4.5. So how much fabric did Lindsay use? You should get 4 and 5 tenths. Sorry, this 4 isn't very pretty. Okay. Now 3 was very similar. In 3, we're talking about muffins. So if Mark has 14 muffins, that's what he has in all. He gives a certain amount to his coworkers, so this is how many he gives away. And he's left with 8.5. So again, what he's given away and what he has left should equal the 14 that he started with. So I knew that 14 take away 8.5 meant that he gave away 5.5 muffins. And how do I check this again? I substitute in what I reached as a solution for my variable. And I do in fact get 8.5. And again, this just came right from the equation. I just rewrote this original equation by substituting in my solution. And it does in fact work. For question 4, we know that Caroline charges $15 per hour babysitting. Enrique says that if Carolyn earned $52.50, then she babysat for 3.5 hours. Is Enrique's statement true? Create a one-step equation to explain your answer. Use the variable h to represent the number of hours Caroline worked. So when we know that she makes $15 per hour babysitting, the amount of hours she works changes. So we use a variable to represent the number of hours she works. She could have worked 1 hour, 2 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. We don't know. But what Enrique is saying, that is if she earned $52.50, then that means she worked 3.5 hours. So we are trying to determine that when I solve my equation, does the variable, or h, equal 3 1/2? So my original equation, follow my cursor, was 15h equals 5250. In order for me to isolate h, I have to do the inverse operation. So the opposite of multiplying by 15 is dividing by 15. So dividing by 15 on both sides of my equation told me that the hours that Caroline worked to earn $52.50 was 3 5/10, which is in fact equivalent to 3 1/2. So Enrique's statement is true. And you have your work right here to prove how you know that. So that's it for today. Tomorrow, when you log on for math, you will need to go on to iReady and click on the blue teacher assigned lesson that is solving one-step equations. I will also be posting a video tomorrow morning. Tomorrow is April 1st. No, that is not an April Fool's joke. I will be walking you through how to find your iReady lesson tomorrow, and that will be your assignment for Wednesday. Hope you guys have a